Okay, awesome. So we are live now and we are about to start our Living Room Conversations healthcare topic, which I'm super excited about today. And the first thing I want to do is go through and have everyone introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Rodney.
I'm Rodney Ferguson. Sorry about that. Oakland, very liberal, interested in healthcare. Been doing living room conversations since pretty close to the beginning, and this is really fun for me. So I'll leave it right there. Retiree. I used to work in the city of Richmond, California, which is can be a little dicey. So it's good to be here.
Thanks, Rodney. And then I will go to Heather.
Hi, my name is Heather. I am from the Chicago suburbs. I am a mom of 6 kids, so healthcare is near and dear to my heart, and seeing how my kids are going to grow and what they'll need as they get older.
Thanks, Heather. And then I'm going to go to Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I am in New York City, where I live now. I'm originally from the suburbs in Jersey, and I am here to listen and learn and just see what conversations come out of it.
Thank you, Rachel. And then I'll go to Jamie.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I live in Arlington, Virginia, but I'm originally from a more rural area of Virginia. I'm 22, just recently got involved with Living Room Conversations, and I'm very excited to be here too.
Thanks, Jamie. And Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Jennifer Davis, based in New York City, originally from rural Oregon, and really excited to be here. I'm definitely here today in some ways just to understand better the living room conversation model and how it works, but the topic itself is certainly timely and touches everyone in so many aspects of what we all do daily. So I'm really excited to dive into the topic as well. So thanks.
Thanks. And I'm Katie. I'm 24. I live in Denver, Colorado, originally from Los Angeles, California, and grew up in a really liberal family and got involved in living room conversations about 1.5 years ago. And it's been a really awesome and transformative experience for me. So now I'm going to start with an overview of living room conversations, just so if people are watching and they don't really know what we're doing, they can know a little bit. And the overview is, in living room conversations, a small group of people come together to get to know one another in a more meaningful way. Guided by a simple and sociable format, participants practice being open and curious about all perspectives, with a focus on learning from one another rather than trying to debate the topic at hand. Now I'm going to go over our living room conversations ground rules, which are really important because they set the foundation and the tone for the rest of our conversation. So I'm going to read through these, and the first one is: be curious and open to learning. Listen to and be open to hearing all points of view. Maintain an attitude of exploration and learning. The conversation is as much about listening as it is about talking. Next one is: show respect and suspend judgment. Human beings tend to judge one another. Do your best not to. Setting judgments aside will better enable you to learn from others and help them feel respected and appreciated. The third one is: look for common ground and appreciate differences. In this conversation, we look for what we agree on and simply appreciate that we will disagree on some beliefs and opinions. And then be authentic and welcome that from others. Share what's important to you. Speak authentically from your personal and heartfelt experience. Be considerate to others who are doing the same. And the fifth one is: be purposeful and to the point. Notice if what you are conveying is or is not on purpose to the question at hand. Notice if you are making the same point more than once. I'm guilty of that. And the sixth one is: own and guide the conversation. Take responsibility for the quality of your participation in the conversation by noticing what's happening and actively support getting yourself back on track and others back on purpose when needed. So today we are talking about healthcare, and our first round question is going to be: what interested or drew you to this conversation? And I will start with my own experience. I have been on my parents' healthcare for my whole life, and I'm 24 and should still be on it, but there was some weird clause or something to where I actually am not. So I have been purchasing my own healthcare, and for a while I was on Medicaid, and it's been a whole fiasco. So this is near and dear to my heart because I've also had some pretty sick family members who've had to deal with a lot of serious insurance battles that have sometimes gone to court. So it is a complicated and big issue, and I'm going to move to Heather.
So, as I said, I'm a mom of 6. 2 of my children have mental illness. So it's ADHD. It's, something that they do need medication for their lives, but often isn't covered. And if I were to choose not to do a medicated treatment, let's say I wanted to do counseling or something, that's not always covered in insurance, but it's still critical to the treatment of them and for them to be successful individuals. My family also has mental illness, and that it's not traditionally covered is something that's really important to me and that I advocate strongly for, because we're a whole health. It's not just our bodies, it's our minds as well. So that's what's drawn me into this.
Thank you, Heather. Rodney?
Well, I'm paying too much for healthcare, but I know it's important. So the whole idea is to stay as healthy as humanly possible. And of course, I've been sucked into the news like everyone else and following the debates and the lack of debate. And it's just a totally interesting topic to me, not so much personally, but philosophically and politically. It's just been a wild ride since Obamacare and trying to get rid of Obamacare and the things that Obamacare didn't do for liberals and the thing that Obamacare doesn't do for conservatives. It's just a very interesting topic for me. So I'm totally into it.
Thank you, Rodney. Rachel?
I would say that I don't entirely understand the healthcare system at all. I have listened in on a bunch of different things, tried to understand it better. I know that I'm a young single person who's relatively healthy. I only have health insurance for myself, and I don't get sick that often, but I have seen myself make, my own healthcare decisions based on what something will cost and what it won't cost. And I've, foregone certain things that weren't necessary based on cost. I don't necessarily feel that that's morally the right decision to be making. And I think that we have a system that sets you up to make those decisions. And I guess on a philosophical level, I wonder about the crossroads of money and healthcare. And if those are decisions that always need to be made, is it worth the price for what treatment I'm going to get? Or if we should all just be getting healthcare, regardless of price. So I think that's something that I think about a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Jamie?
Yeah, I'm just really interested in health policy in general. I sort of got interested in that when I was in school, but also, like someone else said, it's just so complicated and confusing that I always want to learn more and talk to other people about it. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Jamie. And Jennifer?
Echoing what so many people have said, I think it's a topic that is so personal, and I think it's become highly politicized in our country, probably because there's a lot of economic aspects underpinning it. But I guess a big, maybe something that's top of mind for me is, why has it become so politicized when it is often can be such a moral issue of kind of what's a human right, or what's a right that a citizen has. Yeah, and I have lived and worked in different parts of the world where it is seen as a human right for any citizen, and it's not such a debate, and it seems to work just fine. So I do wonder why it's something that we aren't able to kind of figure out in our country, and why it continues to be such a source of conflict, as we're seeing very much in the last few days. So.
Awesome, thank you. And then I'm going to facilitate the next round, and then round 3 and on is kind of like, just jump in whenever you like. So Our next round is on core values, and you can answer one or more of the following questions. What sense of purpose, mission, duty guides you in your life? What would your best friend say about who you are and what makes you tick? Or what are your hopes and concerns for your community and or the country? I guess I'll start with my sense of purpose and duty is feeling connected to people in the world and really getting in touch with my own human compassion. And healthcare is one of those things where policy and compassion come together, and there's just some really fundamental differences. I also believe that healthcare is a human right. I think it's also one of those things where when heavy, large amounts of money get involved, and there's lots and lots of money at stake for certain individuals, is when things get really heated. And hopes and concerns for the community and the country, I guess I'll say the country, is more unity and less hate. And I know that's just such a broad general term and might be a little bit kumbaya for people. And I don't know exactly what that road is, but I know at least with each of these conversations, I feel like I'm doing a little bit of something to make our country just a bit more unified, because we got to get it together. I don't know. It's stressful. But I am going to move to actually Jamie.
Yeah, so for my hopes and concerns, I'm probably just going to echo Katie, really, that we need more unity. And I especially worry about sort of the hyperpolarization that we live in right now through internet and social media, and ways we can help fix that. And so that's what I really care about and what really drives my passion. So yeah.
Thanks, Jamie. Heather?
Hi. So I'm really driven by a sense of improvement, always wanting to make things better. And for the community, I don't know, I love food. I like to cook. And I feel like if you think of the United States as that melting pot, we're just a beautiful sauce, and we've just kind of broken down. We're breaking apart. It's kind of like we've cooked ourselves too long and trying to analyze and look at differences that we've forgotten we're supposed to mix together and make this really awesome sauce of a country. So, I'm really hoping we can learn how to talk to each other and let each other's flavors shine and still be a cohesive unit of a country.
Thank you, Heather. Rodney?
Well, like I said, I'm a former teacher, so education is very important to me. As far as healthcare, one of my brother's favorite words is an education or educable moment. I think that's it for the whole country. This healthcare debate is kind of a Rorschach test for the whole country. So we'll see how it plays out. It should be interesting. This latest turn about, well, I guess the Republicans and Democrats are going to have to work together to get something. Actually, I think that's a positive deal. So we'll see how that plays out if it doesn't tear the country apart in the meantime. So I think it's going to be up to our congressional leaders and to some degree Trump to get this together and see how that happens. It's going to be quite the challenge. But I think it should be positive in the country if it works out okay. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So to quote Nietzsche. So we'll go with that.
Thanks, Rodney. Rachel?
I think I would start by answering your second question of what my friends would say about me. I think my friends think of me as a pragmatist who's trying to be an idealist, maybe. And I want to see better things happening, and I want to see that, that shining city on the hill. I think the pragmatism behind it is that that's not going to happen. I think for me, I'm a very fact-based analytical person. And I think that for any policy discussion, what I would want for our community and for our country is to get some of that emotion out of it and to get down to the reality. It's an economic system. It's a bureaucracy. It's all of these things. And for me, that's kind of the fundamentals of it. And I wish that we could find a way to have a conversation that just got down to the nuts and bolts and said, how can you actually make this work for people and remove a lot of the vitriol and all of that outside of it. And that's my pragmatist side. And I think my failing idealist side is that I'm not sure that that's going to happen or that that's possible. And so I guess I would like some reassurance that we could do that at some point.
Thanks, Rachel. And Jennifer.
You've all said such wonderful things. I love the soup metaphor that we've cooked too long. Maybe I'm the inverse of Rachel, an idealist who desperately seeks to be a pragmatist. I do worry that the toxicity is reached a point of no return. It concerns me very much that there's less and less of an appetite for bipartisanship or even non-partisanship. And I think that is playing itself out very much in this particular debate. And as everyone has said, this, when you're talking about healthcare, at the end of the day, you're talking about people's lives and about their pain and suffering. So it even becomes something so much bigger. So I think we're in a raw moment as a country, and I think we are all feeling it no matter where you sit. Politically, there's a rawness right now, and I think a lot of the fault lines and divides in our country are very exposed at the moment. And I've mostly am just feeling really concerned about that. And I think these kinds of conversations can go a long way. I do wonder what the true appetite is for, and whether our political sphere is a reflection of where our citizens are, or if the political sphere is influencing the kinds of discussions we're having. I'm not sure what's influencing what, but I know that we're in a really raw place. And I don't know if I'm hitting the question, but yes, that does go to the heart of my hopes and concerns for my community and the country. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm going to go into our round 3, which is what are our hopes and concerns about healthcare? And so we're going to answer one or more of the following questions, which is, there's quite a couple, so you can pick. How are your healthcare needs met? Are you happy with your healthcare? What do you think is the right balance between individual, business, government, and other ways in providing healthcare? Do you believe you get a good value for your healthcare dollars? What else would you like to say about healthcare? What do you think of businesses who do or don't provide health insurance for their employees? These are all pretty big, but I guess I'm going to start with my own personal experience of, this is really frustrating. My deductible is so high. It's like $7,000, and I picked this because it's the cheapest one, and I'm 24, so I don't really have that many issues. But when I do have an issue, it's like I'm not going to meet a $7,000 deductible in a year, so I'm pretty much just paying extra so I don't get dinged. It's for people who are young, it sucks, and I understand that in a lot of ways I'm paying this money so that elderly people and really, really sick people can get care, but it's like, it's just really frustrating. Certain things come up and you want to see a doctor and I can't afford it, and it's just really hard. And there's some people who, my uncle had brain cancer and our family was just drowning in hospital bills. It was horrible. And so finding a balance like that, I do wish the government and employers took better care of their employees. Even stress adds to people having to go to the hospital from work. So it's just super complicated, and I'm sure I'll come back to more of that in a minute. And I'm going to go to Rodney. Yeah.
Well, I've been fortunate. I'm an older guy, as you can probably tell, and my healthcare is, kind of like the Cadillac plan and all that stuff. But the deal is it sustainable, and it should be for everybody. Overall, I'm a single payer kind of in favor of that. Let me put that out right there. I think everyone deserves health care. I think health care is a right. I think health care is for everyone. I think it should be that way. And I think we spend our national priorities are skewed. And the first thing we should do is take care of people's health. And it's not working out that way so far. So I've been lucky, but a lot of my friends haven't, and some of my family hasn't. So therefore, I think in order to get everyone in the game, everyone has to be in the game. I don't really think it's a business's responsibility. I think it's a government responsibility in that we're all part of the government. We support the government, and we should all take care of ourselves and each other. And I think that that's a path toward cohesiveness, is if we feel we're responsible for all of us, that each of us is responsible for all of us, then I think that helps toward a melting pot back to, or a soup that's not overcooked. We need to throw some more water in that soup and turn down the heat. And I think universal health care would do that.
So now
If
everyone
that
can, yes.
If that answers the question.
There's a lot of questions, so I'm sure we'll kind of just be bouncing around. And now everyone kind of just jump in as they like or raise their hands. And I think I saw Heather.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, with the health industry the way it is, I think everybody should have access to healthcare. And for me, the health insurers really get in the way of that. So based on whether health insurance I have, I can't go see the doctor that's, maybe 2 blocks from my house because they're not under the health insurance plan that's been provided by my provider. So I would like to get rid of health insurance and go more to a direct. We see the doctors we choose directly. I would like to see more access to doctors. I think of rural areas where I grew up, and there necessarily weren't doctors or hospitals around. So for those people, it's not even a matter of having insurance, it's having access to doctors and hospitals. That's a bigger challenge. So I don't know, for me, when I look at what they have going on, this requirement to hold insurance, I'm not comfortable with. And like Katie, you're saying the high deductibles, you take that risk, but God forbid anything happened to you, be in a car accident. I know with those high deductibles, I can't cover that. I'm just choosing the high deductible because it's the monthly payment I can afford for me and the family. So for me, health insurers are really getting in the way. And I think about, eye care insurance. I need my glasses, but, vision insurance isn't covered. And I just go directly to my optometrist and I say, look, I don't have health insurance, vision insurance. What's the rate? And I go with the one that goes best in that way. So with that, I'm done talking now.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Well, I can share a little bit, I guess, about my experience getting health insurance, which I think the thesis, which I'll work my way around to, is that it hadn't occurred to me until the last couple of years that health insurance didn't need to be tied to your place of employment. I think I had just taken that as a given. And I have come to realize more and more what a challenge that is. In the last year, I started a new job, which has had a real change in my health insurance situation. Prior to it, I was at a small organization with a health plan that was based on the people that worked there. So say it's about a dozen people who happen to all be older, lower income women who are some of the most expensive people to insure. And because that was the entire employee pool, the premium for our group of employees was really, really high. And it was less expensive for me to just go onto the Obamacare markets as a younger, healthy female and buy my own insurance, which is what I ended up doing. Thinking that this was a great idea. Had a very small instance where I needed to go to one of the URGI centers here in New York City. And when I walked in, they looked at it and said that they don't take that health plan. They're pretty much universal. They take almost everything else, but they didn't take the Obamacare plan. So I ended up for about 2 years with a health insurance plan that basically did nothing. I couldn't use it anywhere. It didn't really function in any way, but it would be much more expensive for me to go in my employer plan. Within the last year, I switched jobs, and just by happenstance, the new job I'm at happens to offer really great insurance, and it's at a much lower rate. And I think I had this realization when that happened, that how arbitrary that is, that I go from one job to another. The jobs aren't all that different. The organizations are similar size. It's a similar part of the country. Very little about my lifestyle changed, but my health insurance all of a sudden has changed dramatically. And that just felt, I think for the first time, I really lived through the feeling that this can't be the right way for this to work. And, a pool of just a dozen older low-income women, need to be absorbed into the pool of the rest of America in these healthcare costs. And so I think that's my very short personal experience that led me to believe that tying healthcare to employment has to just be the first step that's not going very well. And maybe at the fundamentals of the way the system is built, we have a little bit of a disconnect.
Thank you. I guess what I wanted to say is, these insurance companies are making disgusting amounts of money. And I think anything involving people's health and groups making that amount of money off of people's health, just something has to be wrong like that. It's just insane. And so, of course, they don't want to lose the money that they're making. So I wish we could make that part of healthcare somehow less, in terms of that it's all about money. Also, dang, hospitals are really, really expensive. It's insane. I know my friend went to the ER because they had untreated mono, and they just were in there for like 20 minutes and got a $4,000 bill. And the doctor saw them for like 10, 15 minutes. And I think if we get a little bit more down into the nitty gritty, these doctors are overwhelmed with paperwork and things they have to do that they just don't really even see their patients that much anymore. And so I think there's a lot of bureaucratic BS getting in the way of people being able to help other people, whether that's through insurance or healthcare providers themselves. And I don't really have any answers right now. I just know that I'm sure there are people out there that do, and people need to be able to do their jobs. So yeah.
The vested interest in keeping that money flowing and how it flows, I think is really influencing the political process on all sides. And I think it's a very money-driven system. And America's a money-driven system, but I think healthcare needs to be taken out of that equation in some form or fashion. I think there are going to be some serious conversations. Like I said, it's going to be a litmus test for the country about where we're going to go from here on and how we're going to look at things. And healthcare is going to tie into employment. It's going to tie into education. It's going to tie into a whole bunch of other issues. And kind of once you get healthcare settled as how it's going to be and how it's going to work, I think that's going to have a ripple effect through the rest of the economy and the rest of the country. So I think it's worthy of this kind of debate, and it's kind of worthy of the drama we're going through, because I think it's going to take it to where the country's going to go is going to be driven by how we answer this health question. So that's my other 2 cents.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, really agree with what Rodney just said in terms of this being a topic that is a root driver of so many other aspects of our country, and that, the preventative healthcare, if we fix that, it can have a ripple effect on so many different interventions and different aspects of what we're dealing with as a culture, society, country, and it just seems to be a very key intervention. We in my work, we talk a lot about looking at kind of the root cause of an issue. Healthcare and health, when you look at, you can take it all the way back to even looking at maternal and infant health, which I was raised by a mother who's a dietitian working with infant and maternal health on an Indian reservation in Northeast Oregon. When you think about kind of the root driver of how a child then comes into a healthy environment and grows up to be a healthy individual and a healthy adult, and then also how we age as a society. It has so many different ripple effects into how we engage one another, into our economic systems, into our education returns. It's such a root driver of so many different aspects. It's become highly politicized. The system is broken. We're not getting. It's also a highly expensive system. So even while we're concerned about kind of it fitting together, it's also costing us an enormous amount as a country. So there's so many different pieces that aren't fitting together, and it's hard to think of something more vital when we really think about our country working and our individuals. How we treat our children, how we treat our aging population. It hits so many different aspects that, to me, go down to a real moral question. At the end of the day, I think it's a real moral question about who we are and how we show up as citizens. So I guess I'll just stop there, but I echoing some of what Rodney was saying.
Can I go?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just think it's interesting. Everybody on the call seems to agree that the current system is broken. And I think it's just nice that we can all sort of, like, even if we're from different political persuasions, we can all sort of agree on that. And I think this might be idealistic, but everybody sort of wants what's best, and we just disagree on the best way to get there. Right now, we need to sort of go in one direction or the other with sort of like a universal healthcare system versus market-based. And personally, I'm of the market persuasion. I am not a fan of anything that brings the more bureaucratic red tape, as you said, Katie, and the government into our lives. But I just think it's important for everybody to remember that we all want what's best. And I feel like the way that it's politicized has sort of caused a lot of just like more hyper-partisanship than before, with everyone sort of picking sides. And we really need to have some bipartisanship on this as an issue, because as you all said, it really can affect the rest of our economy in a huge way. So yeah, that's
Thanks, Jamie. Rodney, did you have something to say? I guess that's something I wanted to talk about was who is worthy of healthcare, because somehow I think some people are believed to not be worthy of healthcare, and this has gone to a couple different places. So a moment of hope sparked for me when birth control became covered by everybody. And I can say personally that it would just be so upsetting if that was to be overturned. And just who are making these rules of who gets to be covered for what things and who doesn't get to be covered for what things, and what is considered an illness and what is not. And I've known a lot of people who have had problems with drugs trying to get into treatment centers, and their insurance companies won't let them in, or they go to a treatment center and it's like so messed up. And so it's like things like that, or people who are obese. And women, I guess on a deep level, I feel like women have less benefits when it comes to healthcare and all these ridiculous preconditions that would make you not qualify for healthcare. I mean, I know personally, if I read some of these lists that have been going around, I'm not qualifying for healthcare when I'm a perfectly healthy 24-year-old woman. So that's just a small vent from me about my frustrations and those things. Heather?
I was just gonna say, when I listen to the debates and I hear people say they want single payer, the government should cover healthcare for all, one of my fears that comes into place is I look in places where the government currently provides healthcare, like the VA system. I'm like, no, that's not I don't think that's the model that I look at, and that's not what I want for everybody. I hear so many issues with it. Sometimes it works well, but overall it seems what I hear is, long waits, or things aren't covered, or it gets tied up, things are buried. And that's definitely not the system I want. And I'll just read it. I really think we need to figure out a way to tackle the health insurance industry. I think that's the biggest hurdle in all of this. As you're saying, Katie, they're determining who gets coverage and what kinds of coverage. And as Rachel was saying, depending on what coverage you happen to get determines your healthcare, whether it's you're paying for it because you can afford it or your employer is offering it. That to me seems morally wrong, that there's that middleman in there. I think people should have a lot more freedom and choice in choosing their care.
I agree. And I think if more people were encouraged to go to the doctor more regularly, they would probably have to deal with less large, gigantic problems, because I don't want to go to the doctor because I don't want to pay for it. But if I got a yearly checkup, I could so easily catch something that would save everybody down the line hundreds of thousands, if not sometimes millions of dollars. That just came to me. That's a good idea.
That's so funny. I was just talking to my parents about that yesterday. They're like, you need to go to the doctor, and that's going to save you money down the line. I feel like people forget about that as even being an aspect to consider.
I would say that that's, I think I agree that we should probably be better about preventative care, but I think most government policies that are based on behavior change or, encouraging people to make different decisions or behave in different ways is not always the most successful unless there's some other system behind that's backing that up. Because, even if they tell me my doctor's free for which I think it is, I think I can go to an annual checkup every year for free. And I'm I think relatively well-adjusted, intelligent person, and I still don't necessarily go to the doctor every year. So I think that policies based on individual behavior change are challenging, but I don't know. That's the end of that thought.
So what are the advantages? I think a lot of this, our kind of main difference right now is coming down to single payer versus market. And I personally I see the pros and cons to both, because I go to the DMV. I don't want healthcare like the DMV, you guys. That sounds horrible. But at the same time, so it all comes down to cutting costs is what it looks like, is they can't afford to have people at the DMV. So you wait for a million trillion hours. But these insurance companies aren't being controlled. So how we find something good in there, I would like to hear some ideas about that.
I think that, sorry, you can go ahead, Rodney.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that the idea behind a market-based system is that it would cut costs if we eliminate some regulations and some barriers to entry. And I'm not an expert on this by any means, so I'm just sort of saying what I think. And healthcare is so complicated; it's hard for any of us to really know. But yeah, as far as cutting costs, I think that that's the whole point of the market-based system, is that it would cut costs for everybody, but it's you have to take away some of the regulations and the mess that we have now to sort of start over, I guess.
Well, since I'm the old man here, the traditional system was market-based. And what you saw was increasing costs at a higher rate than you did under Obamacare. And the reason is if markets work like markets are supposed to, like you read in an economics 101 book, it's supposed to be competition. The deal is there's not really competition. Once you get at the corporate level, it seems that corporations kind of have a winking and nodding understanding of what costs are supposed to be, what you're supposed to charge for things. Yeah, they're different all over the map in some ways for certain procedures. But overall, it seems that the larger corporations are in collusion about what things should cost. So you don't really get a natural capitalistic system the way it's supposed to work. What you get is corporate capitalism, which is a little different, which makes costs go higher. As far as government inefficiency, I worked in the government and it was totally inefficient. VA is inefficient, the military is inefficient. So there's got to be a way of working toward that system that actually works well. Now with new technology, maybe things will work better. DMV is better than when I was a kid. I went to Berkeley. You used to have to stand in line to get your classes, and now everything is online. It's a totally much better system. So the hope is for technology and computers and social media may play a larger role. I have Kaiser. And so Kaiser has lots of technological ways to talk to your doctor. Also, the kind of stuff you can get a checkup by making a phone call or going online. Yeah, I don't know if it's a really great checkup, but they're calling it a checkup. So, so I think the combination of private industry, public industry, and technology may come out. I will be the optimist. May turn out to be okay, but it's going to take a lot of work to get to that solution.
I would say also maybe piggybacking off of that a little bit. It's interesting. We don't have any doctors in this conversation, but I think that they have a lot to say about how doctors are incentivized to provide care, and how hospitals and clinician networks work and things like that. So I guess maybe it's more of a question to everybody than an answer, but what we think about the potential for the different ways for doctors as a provider for their behavior change to maybe contribute in some way to different procedures, different costs, different billing, things like that. I don't know that it's their responsibility. And I've actually visited several doctors where before they've done anything, I've asked them what it's going to cost. And often they tell me they don't know and they have to look it up. So I don't know if that's an important part of the puzzle or not.
I feel like I've heard, or I've seen videos at least, of different doctors. A lot of them have different perspectives on this. Some of them are like, I just want to treat people. I don't want to have to worry about this. I wish that this wasn't in my field, was the money part of everything. And then I've heard some doctors say, I have to treat people that come in here. So these costs are going somewhere and they're not being distributed evenly. So when people come to the ER, I have to treat them, and then the government ends up paying for it. So if everyone was covered, then it would just be better that way. It's really just who is bearing the costs of these treatments. And then there's other places where if someone's dying, they'll treat them. But then after that, they can't give them any more care past they're no longer in an emergency situation. So doctors, I think, are caught between a rock and a hard place. And I'd like to hear what else you guys had to say about that.
I think there's some topics, if you look at something like the opioid epidemic, which I think highlights some gaps in our system and some real flaws when you look at kind of the history of regulation of different aspects of our healthcare system. A lot of the roots of that were in how, how different opioid pain management drugs were allowed to be prescribed before they were approved by the FDA. And there being these kind of gaps, but that the ripple effects then have been that we're sitting with an opioid epidemic that's going to impact generations of individuals and families. I think, understanding then how those gaps exist and how we regulate and deregulate prescriptions, how these pharmaceutical lobbies have allowed to have such power and influence in a healthcare system. I mean, there's a push and a pull there that has to do with public policy and has to do with markets and has to do with, power and influence. And I think you can't have this conversation without also recognizing that plays a role, that it would be nice to think, and I think someone just mentioned that if there is kind of a purity of a capitalist system where, it kind of corrects itself, but I don't think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing areas where the system itself is itself ill, and also that there's real inconsistencies in what different populations have access to along, the lines that we know exist in the United States, and as far as urban and rural divides, racial divides. Someone brought up gender and women's health, which I think is another topic that continues to come up. So I would like to believe that the market could correct itself, but I don't see that evidenced, and you just see areas where there's been an abuse. And I, again, just coming back to my original point, that I feel like looking at the pharmaceutical lobby and ways that those opioids were allowed into our market pre-approval and what that has created is to me a sign of how that system isn't and really can't work as it's currently structured.
So that's actually a really good point. And we just created a conversation about the opioid epidemic. And so that's probably going to be our next living room conversation. And I know a couple people have to get off this call at the top of the hour. So I'm actually going to go ahead and move into our round 4. Usually in person, these conversations take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. So definitely squishing it in a little bit. I know this topic is gigantic. And so I'm going to move into round 4, reflection, and answer one or more of the following questions in one sentence. Share what was most meaningful or valuable to you in the experience of this living room conversation. What new learning, new understanding, or common ground was found on this topic? Has this conversation changed your perception of anyone in this group, including yourself? Go ahead.
I could start. I reiterate that I feel like we do have a lot of common ground here, just because everyone can sort of agree that what we're doing now isn't exactly working. And I was really interested to hear everyone's thoughts and different perspectives, because this is such a controversial topic and it's so hard right now to talk about because it's so in the moment, I think. But I was happy to see that we were able to find common ground.
I was happy to see that too. And to be honest, as someone who is liberal, I've kind of been fed this idea that single payer healthcare is the way to go. And I'm not saying that isn't true, but learning to broaden my horizons about doing market differently is something good for me to explore. Yeah.
Well, I mean, listening to you guys' personal stories, young people's perspectives, perspective of a mother with children, and the challenges you guys are facing really brings to full focus how important it is to solve this issue, and hurriedly. And so if the markets can have certain efficiencies, and they maybe have to work to bear in order to solve this problem. Government's going to have a role. But I think the AMA really is going to have to speak up, and doctors may have to come up with their own plan. It would be nice to see it'd be nice to see a unified vision from the medical profession and what they think. And I haven't seen it. It might be around. I just don't know what it is. So that would be interesting too. So all these players have to get involved. So it's nice to see people from a different perspective, a different age group. And thank you for sharing your stories.
I'll go next. Hearing everybody's stories is really interesting. It reminds me that everybody's aware that it's a big problem. I think sometimes we get so focused on what somebody thinks the solution is that we fall into this trap of thinking they've got it all figured out. And when you really start talking to people, you realize it's just an idea that they have that they too also understand. It's a huge issue that we're trying to address. And they're just kind of coming up with the best idea based on the information that they have and from where they're coming from. And I think universally, everyone in the country pretty much agrees that we do need to take care of each other. Nobody wants to stop somebody from receiving care, that there are people who are vulnerable among us and we want to come together and take care of them. I mean, we don't want people not to have access to healthcare. It's just, how do we best make sure that people have that in a way that's people feel is fair and equitable? And it's a huge challenge. And I think we can only get there in baby steps and kind of try something, learn from it, review it, and make adjustments as we go instead of trying to come up with a big grand scheme that's going to fix everything. I think we can just focus on little bits. Do we start and say, hey, let's get control of the pharmaceutical industry, or let's take a look at how insurance is happening and tackle that a little bit first?
I agree. I think we suffer from analysis paralysis, to where we analyze something so hard that it takes so long. But at the same time, it's hard when it comes to healthcare because the decisions we make can essentially decide if people live or die. So that's just me saying that this situation is really tough. And I think I heard Jamie? Yes? No? Okay. Rachel?
Sure. I think that coming into this, I think I already believed that a small group of people, no matter what they feel, can sit down and have a conversation with each other. I think I believe in that model. And I also just think that that's the reality, that people talking to people can function and can do that. I think it reiterates a question I've always had on any subject matter, which is what happens between this and the national stage? Why does it fall apart when we get to that larger scale? And why do the things that seem so easy to do in conversation, civilly and productively, fall apart? And I know that it comes down to sound bites, and it comes down to making things digestible and easy to just push out through the news cycle. But I just it keeps me questioning why this can't continue, why we can't continue to do that on all scales, and why it needs to become what it becomes on the national level. When I think deep down, everyone who voted for anyone in DC really just wants to see things work out. I don't think there are that many people hoping the whole system explodes into pieces. So that's more of a musing than a full answer.
Thanks, Rachel. Jennifer?
Yeah, very much in agreement with Rachel's comments just now. And I guess this conversation is another reflection and reminder of the value of civil discourse, and also how little we have it on the national stage, but also, yes, a feeling that it's something that is not out of reach in small groups. So what happens in that, the scaling up on the national level? And how are those voices used for political purposes? But yeah, this is just, it's nice to connect. I see that there's a spectrum of views here, but it's a platform for civil discourse, and we definitely need more of that, and we need more of it at the state and national level too.
Totally. And I think everyone knows or has known sick people. And so I think there's a lot of people who I think I would say really rude stuff to that I don't like in the political world, but if I actually sat down with them, I don't really think I would do that. So there is something really different about something on a national level and something on a person-to-person human level, because I know there are people in this group who have some pretty different views about healthcare. But when we come down to it and get a little bit more human, it's just different. And so I'm going to go into our round 5, which is accomplishments and next steps, which is our last round. If you could answer both of the following questions, that would be great. What is one important thing you thought was accomplished here? One important thing that was accomplished here. And is there a next step you would like to take based upon the conversation you just had?
I'll go. The point about small groups work out really well, but once you get into the larger community or larger group like Congress or Senate or whatever, it gets muddled and terrible. One thing I have not seen is a working group in either Congress, in the House of Representatives, or in the Senate, of a bipartisan working group on healthcare issue. I mean, the Democrats went all by themselves on Obamacare. Republicans come back and go all by themselves on, I guess, Trump care. Where's the bipartisan working group of maybe 6 or 7 folks of differing opinions actually working something out? And maybe that's just something we need to push for. It's like, look, why don't you guys get together in a small group of differing opinions and see what you can work out? And maybe that's what I'll push for. That'll be my go-to thing. Is share a living room conversation in the Senate and the House of Representatives and see if that works out.
I would love that.
think it'd be fun. I'm in Illinois and have two
Kate, you gonna
Democrats.
chair that or no?
Oh yeah, I'll chair that. Definitely. Heather?
I was gonna say, I'll invite my two Democratic senators. You guys, if you've got differing party senators, we'll get them together and have them chat it up. But for me, I'm one of the people that has to leave at the top of the hour. It has been a great experience hearing everybody's viewpoints. And I'm reminded that people who want single player aren't, like tax me heavily, and at the root, we want people to be taken care of. And, one thing that I'm going to walk away from is, give a lot harder consideration to who is lobbying our government officials, and just ask them to be more transparent and say, what donations are you taking from the healthcare industry, and how is that influencing your vote? Who, are the insurers influencing you from the pharmaceutical companies? And maybe some more transparency in that will help break and open the conversations more.
Totally.
I can go.
Okay, Jamie.
I think that one important thing that we talked about was sort of the baseline philosophical differences that exist in healthcare, but how they can sort of, everybody, like Heather said, everybody wants people to be taken care of. And hopefully that can lead, if that realization can help us maybe stop demonizing other sides of the aisle and just try to work towards bipartisanship, like Rodney said. And I think personally what I want to do next probably be more research, because it's just so complicated. And I want to be more informed about what I'm talking about, and, and just for myself. And so I'm just very interested in the topic in general. So I definitely want to learn more.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I'll say I'm totally interested, sorry, Jennifer, in learning more. And I know there's so many things that I do not know, and I'm running off of personal experience here. But I think it seems like a large amount of the country can agree that what we're doing is not working, but the way in which we move from there is pretty different. I'm excited to have a conversation about the opioid epidemic next, because I think that is a specific manifestation of the problems that's happening in our healthcare industry. So if you guys would like to join me in that at some point, please let me know. And I'm going to move to Jennifer next.
Great. I jumped in because I just echoing Jamie's comments that I recognize how little I know. It's a very complex system to understand, and you could even on the state level there's differences. So it's hard to stay educated about it, and then there's a lot of misinformation. We're in this post-fact world, which I know is another living room conversation topic. So I think maybe just a commitment I want to make to myself is just to become more educated on it, and in some ways maybe even just locally to understand more, like what's happening in my state, what's happening, what are some different shifts going on, and as always, as far as an important thing accomplished here, it's just great to hear perspectives that aren't ones that I hold, because I, like many, find that it's hard to. I don't have a lot of people around me that disagree, and I would say that's not by choice. I don't believe it is. I would like more diversity of opinions, but the fact is, a lot of people around me are very similar politically. So it's just nice to have that opportunity to hear some other thoughts. So.
And Rachel, we're going to end with you.
I'm not sure I have all that much to add, so I'm just going to pass on my speaking turn.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end our live stream on Facebook. Say thank you, Facebook.